Hello and welcome to Makers.dev, episode number 88. Chris, we have forgotten to make this announcement for the last, I think, 4 episodes, but we hit 10,000 downloads! Congratulations.
Right. Yeah, 10,000 on Transistor alone. That's not even including YouTube. So, yeah, that's cool. It's a milestone.
That is cool. That's 10,000. That's so much. And each episode is like an hour long. And, probably not everyone is listening to the whole episode, but that's, 10,000 hours, or at that scale of magnitude that people have been listening to this podcast. That's a lot of hours. That's how many days is that? 10,000 divided by 24 is 416 days. That's over a year. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's cool. And
what a year that would be of just listening to this podcast just over and over. That's a lot. That's a lot of human life, and yeah, that's really cool. We also have 3 redactions to make. I'll start off with I was so frazzled and excited to be in your office and how cool it was that I said last episode was 88, I think, but it was actually 87. And
Yep.
You should probably tell that from the episode title, but that's first redaction. What's your redaction on the base palindrome thing?
Oh, yeah. So a while ago, I think you started with your number fact that 82 is a palindrome in 2 bases.
Yes.
And then I said it was a palindrome in base 82 as well, which is actually not correct because that would be like 10. But
Yes.
It is a palindrome in base 83 and every other base after that, because whatever character you choose for character 82 is just a single character, which is a palindrome. So it's actually a palindrome in 2 plus infinity bases. So
I'm
take that,
curious.
Wikipedia.
I just got that from Wikipedia as an interesting fact. I kind of want to go on Wikipedia now and push a little bit on the interestingness of that fact, because you're totally right. Any number is a palindrome in a base higher than that number. So, yeah, that I guess they would need to add on the qualifier. This number is a palindrome in 2 different bases that are less than this number. Yeah, good redaction. I have a redaction from episode 86, I think. I tried to look up an interesting fact about, was it 86? Hold on. No, 85, episode 85. I tried to say an interesting fact that 85 was oh gosh, where did it go? The smallest number that can be expressed as a sum of 2 squares with all the squares greater than 1 in 2 ways. And then I started trying to say like, oh yeah, it's 92 plus 22 plus 72 plus 62, but you were like, those aren't squares, Christian, what are you talking about? And I realized that I had just carelessly copy and pasted it from Wikipedia, and it's not 92 plus 22, it's 9 squared plus 2 squared, and when I copy and pasted it, it didn't do the exponent. So my redaction is that fact is still true. 85 is the smallest number that can be expressed as a sum of 2 squares with all the squares greater than 1 in 2 ways, and those 2 ways of the 2 sets of squares are 9 squared plus 2 squared and 7 squared plus 6 squared. So, okay, those are the redactions out of the way.
So there you go. Bunch of math for you.
If anyone's just joining in, we don't usually talk about math this much on episodes, but it's important to be rigorous and truthful in what we say. All right, that's all for that. You have some updates, I'm sure, on Kaggle stuff. I think last time we talked, you decided you were probably just not going to work at all on the poisoned example, and hopefully just no one else gets it either, and you just ride out the remainder of the days. Have you changed your mind? Are you still just riding that out?
I am, but I can't help but work on it. So yes,
That's
I've worked more on it. I am completely out of ideas, but I'm trying things anyway. And so there are like everything I try now is less and less likely, I think. But yeah, I keep seeing very interesting things. So even if I don't get it, well, one, I hope no one else does, because then I'll still get the money, so that's great.
Yeah.
But even if someone else does, like, I've still learned a ton. I haven't ever like dove this deeply into the weights and the gradients and the losses of a model before. Like, you use all those things, but a lot of it's abstracted away from you, and so I've learned how to dig very deeply into models, which is pretty cool. So it's all stuff I sort of knew was there, and I could look at it if I wanted to, but I just didn't, and this is a sort of a reason to. It's also like a very interesting way to learn things. I wish there were more of these, like for all sorts of different things, because it forces you to really learn the thing, or just guess wildly, which I did on some of them. So like one of the things was brute forceable, and so they actually had to change the way they were calculating things on the server because too many people were just hammering the API call to brute force it. But as long as you actually give it a good try, you learn a ton. So yeah, I kind of wish, or I may try more. They're called capture the flag contests, and this is the first one on Kaggle, but they're all over the place. Like, so this one's through DEF CON, and so DEF CON has some every year, and yeah, so look for capture the flag contests in whatever field you think is interesting, and you might learn a bunch.
I have several thoughts off of that. The first is the brute forceable one. I think I vaguely remember you also brute forcing that. Is that how you solved it?
Yeah, I tried to be a little smarter, so I brute forced it in less time than it would take if I just ran through everything. So like, I basically had flag. So part of the problem with that one is, I won't go into all the details, but it was very unclear whether what your index needed to be, like whether it was base 0 or base 1, and if you're looking at like the file versus how you imported it into Python. So that was like plus or minus 1 for every line I thought was interesting anyway, and then I had about 50 interesting lines, and so I did it in something like 50 times 3 squared, whereas if you brute forced everything, it would be like 1900 squared tries. So I did it in significantly less, but yeah, I basically brute forced it.
Okay. Is the correct way to have solved that to have known if it was indexed on 0 or 1?
No, the correct way is to look more closely at it and think about it harder. Because like when I saw the answer, I was like, oh yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah, the right way would have just been.
This is an interesting question for me. Then it sounds like they've changed. Would your method work right now with the changes that they made?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what the change they made is a tokenizer problem. So it was like you're trying to trick a tokenizer, and what they were doing is they were running the tokenizer on every web request. What they changed it to is they just hard coded the answer, and so if you got the right answer, they return. So they basically reduced their server by, I don't know, 100x probably.
Okay.
By just hard coding the answer on the back end.
The server's functioning the same way, but they're not using as much server.
Exactly. It returns the same answer, but it allows people to brute force it because that's what people are doing.
Okay. Because they knew that's what. Okay, yeah, they're just making it more efficient. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Second thing, the higher theme of like capture the flag as a good way to learn things. I love from our conversation about ADHD a super long while back. This hooks into so many things of like it's a competition and it's fun and you can compare yourself against other people and you have an objective score and you get these little dopamine hits that you've solved the problem. I love that as a method of learning. I think that could be extended to any sort of learning. Like you gotta capture the flag on learning what a preposition is and solve these challenges or something like that would be so much more engaging to me than fill out this worksheet or read this textbook. I'm reminded also of a conversation I had with a couple that bought our old couch off of Facebook Marketplace. I was talking with the guy while I was helping him move it. Found out he was a club manager for a club in Frisco, I think, which is a city close by here. And so I was asking him all about what it's like managing a club in Frisco, and he was like, yeah, you got to use, customer psychology, and that goes into how you're designing the menu and doing the different prices. And sounded like he was successful and really liked what he was doing. And he's even consulting for other clubs. He does sort of a Gordon Ramsay like Kitchen Nightmares thing where he goes in and helps them renovate their prices. And he was like, yeah, and I did all this without a college degree. And I was thinking, like, how much more is this guy learning by just doing it than, like, if I compared him to someone who got a business degree, I think he knows so much more. Like he's actually been there and he's tried things and he's done experiments and sort of like a capture the flag. Like he was telling me specifically about a lamb dish that cost them, like, I was surprised it was like $1.60 to make. And then they were selling it on the menu for like $10, and he was like, we should raise that to $17. And it sold way better and made them a bunch more money. But like that as a case study to me is so much more valuable than studying the textbook of it. The textbook is useful to understand it and get the theory behind it, but if you're not applying that to a real world example of some sort of a thing where you can get objective feedback in the real world, I think you're missing out on a lot of learning. So I think that the tactic that you're doing of like you're going through the traditional degree program through UT Austin and also doing the side thing of doing capture the flag and actually applying it in a real world application, I think is the best way to go forward. Like you have all the academics and the theory behind it, and you're testing that it actually works. So good job. You're learning AI very well.
Yes, that's the goal. Interesting point about a couple points about MBAs. So Paul Graham has a great quote. Someone asked him if an MBA is useful for a startup, which is kind of like what you're talking about. And he basically said no. He said MBAs were designed to train the officer corps of large companies, which is something you can't really get on the ground experience with unless you're in a large company as an officer, right? Which is rare anyway. And so that's what MBAs were designed for. So they're not designed for this on the ground learning kind of thing. They're like different. They're like totally different things. So yeah, it's if you want to be good at doing club promotion stuff, then the best way to do it is be a club promoter, not get an MBA. And then the next bit is the UT Austin stuff, which is has started up again. So that's the other thing I've been doing. I am taking case studies in machine learning this fall. So that's interesting. We're going to study case studies, and then we have to apply kind of what we learned towards something, and then write a 10-page paper on it. Which actually is pretty short once you get diagrams and stuff in there. I think I'm going to have trouble keeping it to 10 pages. So I have to pick a neat project to work on and write a paper about. I'll probably do a Kaggle competition. Right now, one of them is on Kaggle, the spine one, which we kind of talked about a little bit. I actually started looking through that data, and so I might compete in that one and do that because if I win that one, I have to write it up anyway as part of the winners agreements. So if I get in the top 8, then I have to do that anyway. I don't know if I can, but might try. Also, the other reason I'd pick that one is a lot of people who are really good grandmasters aren't doing that one because the data is huge and you have to dive pretty deeply in it. And instead, right now, there's a couple of competitions that are easy if you already have the pipeline set up for like text stuff. So a lot of grandmasters are participating in other competitions. So I actually feel like I might have a chance if I dive very deeply into spine fracture stuff. So I might do that one.
That's the sort of situation that I think you bought this fancy graphics card and PC for, right? That you have this local way to develop it. And so I would think you have a just baseline unfair advantage over anyone who doesn't have their own on-premise graphics card.
Yeah, that's right. The data is the uncompressed data is like 300 gigs. And so that's very difficult to deal with unless you have an on-premise graphics card. So, yeah.
Cool. I'm reminded also of you reusing writing up the thing for both Kaggle if you win and also the master's program. Reminds me of a very cheeky thing I did in high school where there was an English assignment to pick an author and pick one of his books and write an analysis of it. And as part of that, you had to memorize a monologue from the book. And at the same time, I was in a one-act play production of Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so I asked the teacher, hey, could I pick Ken Kesey as my author and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as my book? And I don't think she knew what the theater department was doing, so she was like, oh yeah, sure, that fits the qualifications of it. And so the monologue I did was just like a monologue that I'd already memorized for being in the play. So it was really easy. There was someone else who was also in the play who was in the class who, when he found out what I was doing, he was like, you cheater.
That's not cheating. That's fine.
Exactly. It's reusing work. It's being effective with it. Yeah,
the professor of the machine learning class actually explicitly said, like, if you're submitting to a journal or something, like you can do this and then submit it to a journal. You could so if with a little bit of pre-work, you can use this for multiple things. Basically, is what he was talking about. So it's totally valid for this class, and I think for that class too. Yeah. Now, if you turn in the exact same paper for 2 classes, I think that's where you get into trouble because it's like that's self-plagiarization. But
right.
Yeah.
But I felt like I could do much better work because I was interested in the book as a play, and I'd been steeped in it and run through effectively reading it dozens of times every time we would do a rehearsal and every time we did a performance. So I feel like that was like one of the best papers and assignments that I did for the English class because it was something I was actually interested in that I was living through that felt like a real world problem. So I think your paper for that, the write-up for that, you're going to do better in the Kaggle competition and you're going to do a better write-up in the assignment because it's a more legitimate, authentic thing that you're interested in that you want to do. So I think that's a good idea. I also have a interest in this particular problem because the idea of diagnosing medical images with ML is so interesting. That could potentially replace pathologists and radiologists. And Sarah was working for a startup that was doing something similar, and just really, really interesting stuff. I think the medical diagnostic landscape is going to look drastically different in about 10 years because of techniques like this. So that would be really cool if you could figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's especially, I think we talked about this before, but it's especially like important where there aren't enough radiologists. So like there are large portions of the world where there's like one radiologist per, like 10 million people or whatever, like, or for an entire country, for example. And so that's where it can be especially helpful. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Neat.
Cool. How about AcornChat stuff? Where's AcornChat?
Yes. So before today, I had not done basically anything for a week or two.
Okay.
You were traveling, and so I had no co-working, and so I did Kaggle the whole time.
Yep.
But today I worked on it. So someone else asked a question about customization, so I answered that question, and the person who's actually paying me had like a feature request, and so I got most of the way through implementing that for him today. So that's great. We've been talking about this person who is using it and not paying. I found out he hasn't used it for like 20 days. So I should reach out to, instead of making him pay, I need to reach out to him and be like, hey, you want to use it again? Figure out why he dropped. So that I think is what I'm going to do. Like just email him instead of figuring out how to make him pay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's not using it.
That's really good that you're running through this manually, because I could see falling into a trap of like building an automated system of after a certain number of days for the trial, then you bug them and tell them to pay for it. But in this person's case, they stopped using it, so that wouldn't work. So what's the interaction that you think would be most valuable to you to have with this person? Asking them why they're not using it? Did they take it off of their website?
So I don't know yet. I just before this I checked and they hadn't gotten a message in 20 days. So I actually don't know if it's still on their website or not.
Okay,
but this is someone who I've emailed with before, and so first I'll check if it's on their website or not, and then I will email them. It'd be like just follow up and try to see if it's not on their website anymore. Then it's straightforward. Like I can ask them what would have what would be helpful for them or why like they left basically. If it's still on their website, I guess just means they don't have much traffic. And so I'll need to think about that. Yeah. But
valuable information either way. And if they had a lot of traffic and they weren't getting messages, that would also be really interesting. Is there something you're doing that could be increasing engagement?
That's true.
Without being spammy, like you don't want to have the automatic pop up. I need to disable that on my site. I do that right now. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think a really valuable, like it would feel bad, but would get you a lot of information is if you went to the website and they were using something else, because then it's like, oh, you like I had you were trying out my thing, and there was something that pushed you off to use this other thing. What was that feature? What was it about that other product?
Yeah.
And then either they tell you something that makes sense for you to do that's within your scope, like the notifications were coming in too late, I need them to come in faster or something, or I need it to be customized in this way and you weren't able to customize it, or it's something totally out of scope that like, well, I don't like Slack and I need it to go in Discord instead. That's probably not within scope for you right now. You want to limit it to people who are using Slack,
right?
That would be valuable no matter what happens. I'm curious to see what the reason was why they haven't gotten messages.
Yep. So yeah, I'll probably email him. Well, today right after this, I got to pick up my kid, and then I got to go do family stuff. So I'll email him tomorrow during co-working.
We're co-working tomorrow. Let's do it.
That's right.
Cool. Yep. And you had COVID before we stopped co-working too, so that's
true.
Good excuses all around. But let's get
well,
back on.
I don't know. I had COVID and then you were gone. I could have worked while you were gone.
In times when you've been gone, I'm still embarrassed, frustrated. I don't know. The fact that I get so much more done just by being on Zoom with you, I don't know. I feel so simple.
Yeah.
I feel like my motivations would be more complicated than that. But yeah, that's all it takes.
Machines made of meat.
Yeah. Meat machines. There's a short story you just reminded me of aliens who are visiting Earth, and they're like, they're made of meat. And they're like, what are you talking about? They have electromagnetic impulses. And they're like, no, those are machines that they make. And they're like, oh, so it's like they have a meat component, but they're part of the machine. And they're like, no. The meat makes the machines. They're separate. the humans are made entirely of meat. And it's just this farcical conversation about how humans are made of meat. It was funny.
That's pretty funny.
Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna have a lot of literary references in my part, and that was a bonus one. Here's my next one. But before I say it, I need a little backstory because it was kind of spooky how this happened. So
Right.
when I was growing up, my aunt would send us VHS tapes of a show called VeggieTales, which is a fantastic show. It's sort of like biblical and ethical lessons in this animated show where all the characters are fruits and vegetables. Bob the tomato and Larry the cucumber being the two lead characters. And there was one episode in particular that was my favorite episode called Madame Blueberry, where it was this blueberry who lived in a house in a tree, and then a Stuff Mart opens next door, which is like a Walmart or a Sam's Club or something. And she goes to the Stuff Mart and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can buy all these things and I'll finally be happy." And there's this whole song of her just buying all the stuff and just ridiculous, a surround sound amplifiers and a set of ratchet pliers and a wraparound deck and all these things. And she gets back to her house in the tree and sees that like the house is so full of stuff that the tree has like bent over. And then she goes to try to rescue the tree, but then the stuff falls out and then her house gets slingshotted and then she doesn't have a house. And then she realizes with her friends Bob the tomato and Larry the cucumber that it was never about the stuff to be happy. You just be happy. And so I've known about this forever. And I was kind of confused about it because other shows in VeggieTales are like based on novels or based on things. So there's one about like Treasure Island, I think, and different stories. But Madame Blueberry, I was like, well, it's just an original story about hedonism. And I found out while looking up the quote that I'm about to say that Madame Blueberry is actually made after a novel called Madame Bovary, which is a much seedier novel about this woman who like cheats on her husband with a bunch of people and spends a whole bunch of money. But it's the same sort of rough plot of like hedonism leads you down a dark hole and like you shouldn't go down there. So, okay, that French novelist is Gustave Flaubert. And he has a quote that was the original quote that I was trying to look up. So this whole realization happened like 20 minutes ago that these two Madame Blueberry, Madame Bovary things are connected. Because I looked up the quote, and the quote is, "Be regular and ordinary in your life so that you may be violent and original in your work." And I looked up that quote because that's how I feel about being back home. Like, traveling was awesome. It was so much fun. Sarah and I got married, and that was great. And got to visit a whole bunch of people. Got to visit you, see your family, hang out with your kids. Sarah's cat got to hang out with your kids. It was so much fun. And like, oh my gosh, I got nothing original done in my work. Like I just got the bare minimum done of like making sure my taxes went through and onboarding one user to File Inbox. I think I had like 2 working days the entire last month. And I would like to be moving my life in a direction of like my life is more boring and more of a routine, so that my work can be supported and original, and I can do all these fun creative things, of which I feel like the last 2 days I've gotten to actually do, and it's been so much fun. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I think as a person I've been drifting away from more of the digital nomad, fun, exciting lifestyle and more towards like, let me just make sure I'm sleeping well and eating well and drinking lots of water and I have good air quality and I'm exercising. And like that can be the same almost every day. And I have based on level of friends and hanging out with family, but I want that to become boring and standard so that I can be making really cool stuff, because I feel like that's where I get a lot of life enjoyment. And then coming up soon, supporting a family with Sarah and having kids and like have a stable, boring foundation so that the kids can be violent and original. I don't know if I want my kids to be violent, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So that's yes, that was a very long, convoluted thought. Yes. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely recognize a lot of that. I mean, you still have to keep life interesting for you, but yeah. So you mentioned kids as well, and one thing I've noticed about kids since having them is routines and are super important. So like being like having a stable like platform for them to do good things on, and so not just So what am I trying to say? Routines like what you do week to week and month to month, but also like every day. Like they know when their bedtime is and they know when they can wake up and stuff, and then out of that comes all the interesting things they can do. So yeah, you need some structure and sort of boringness. Like routines are pretty boring, but you need that. Like otherwise you they get tired and they get cranky, and we're the same, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
we get you go traveling and you get tired and cranky and you can't work as well and you don't know why, and then you get back and you can sort of relax a little bit into your house. So yeah, I like that. I have watched a fair amount of VeggieTales, but I have never seen Madame Blueberry, so I'll have to look that one up.
I highly recommend it. It's my favorite episode of VeggieTales.
VeggieTales has some of the best like kids songs ever too. They
Yeah.
have, Where Is My Hairbrush, and they have
Yes.
the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything,
Yes.
and several fantastic songs.
Very good lessons at the end of it too. Like, well, I don't know what the lesson is of Where's My Hairbrush. I think that's just about.
I think that's
losing
just
your
part
hairbrush.
of yeah.
Yeah, but like the Madame Blueberry episode is about recognizing that you can't get life fulfillment by having more things or more status, and to be thankful. One of the songs in VeggieTales. It's been like years since I've seen this, but like the song is still stuck in my head. Madame Blueberry is on the way to Stuff Mart, sees this poor family who like doesn't have much food, but it's the mom and the dad and their son, and they're singing the song. I thank God for this day, for the sun in the sky, for my mom and my dad, for my piece of apple pie, for the love that we share because he listens to our prayers. That's why we say thanks every day. And on the way to the Stuff Mart, Madame Blueberry is like, that's terrible. They only have one single piece of blueberry pie, and I'm about to get all these other things. And then at the end of the episode, when she loses her house, she sees the same family, and she's like, oh, like being thankful is the true way to get this happiness that I've been searching for. And that's a really deep, like that's a lesson I feel like I'm still learning for a kid's show. And what a wholesome message. And yeah, it's there's like elements of stoicism baked in there. And VeggieTales is it's a much better show than I think I gave it credit for. Yeah. On the topic of routines also, I feel like the way I was raised, I was craving routines, especially around bedtime, and I'm still dealing with some issues of not having these ingrained habits of going to bed at a consistent time, or having regular routines around, waking up or eating. So yeah, that's something Sarah and I would like to do. And I feel like something just from that snapshot of your family's life that Sarah and I got to see, I feel like that's something that you're doing very well from an outside perspective. It seems like you have those routines in place and a very stable home life for your kids.
Yeah, it's driven by our kids. Like some kids, like they can go to bed whenever and they do just fine. Our kids, if they miss bedtime by like even half an hour, then the next day they are just a mess the whole day. And it's just something we've consistently noticed. And so yeah, we put them to bed at the same time every night, then they're fine. If you miss it by half an hour, then they're whiny and so they're a mess. So yeah, it's kid enforced from our perspective as well. Yeah.
I guess they can help you establish boundaries. if you are cognizant that they're trying to test your boundaries, they can help you discover the boundaries and create the routines. Yeah. I think you're doing that well. Cool. Okay. That's the framing of what I'm about to talk about. The violent and original work that I'm doing right now is end-to-end testing, which is actually a very exciting topic. I walked into Sarah's office in the middle of our pond break, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm doing all this cool stuff in end-to-end testing." And she was like, sounds like pushing marketing forward. And I was like, all right, calm down. So there's something I'm doing to push marketing forward, but this is the thing that's important right now. So end-to-end testing, for anyone who's not familiar, is this idea that you run through your entire application as if you were a user. So you're like going to the home page and you click the sign up button and you type in your email address and you type in your password and make sure that the whole application together as a whole unit is working correctly. The most important thing for that for me is like, can a user create an account and then create a page, and then a person can visit the page and upload a file, and the file goes all the way to Dropbox, and the person also gets an email. And I have suffered through not having this for the 8 years that I've been running File Unbox on this legacy Rails app, and I could do end-to-end testing on that, but just set that aside for now. So like I've recognized how important this is, because man, it feels terrible to like I push a change and I'm like, well, that looks like it worked, and then I walk away and go on a road trip or something, and then I get 4 emails from people who are like, hey, this core thing in your application is broken. And I don't find out about that because I'm not checking my email, so I'd find out like 2 days later, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, 4 people emailed me. They actually emailed me like how many people were affected by this, that I made this change that then broke. So if I had a tool where the thing didn't even get deployed if I broke it, that I know all the core functionality is working. And then anytime someone reports a bug, I just add that to the integration test, and now forever in perpetuity, that's another thing that gets tested. So I can make sure that nothing categorical like that is breaking. So this is a thing that I've wanted to do forever, and I'm finally at the place where I can sit down and actually test it. And part of this was spurred by realizing that it wasn't working in Firefox. There was a key thing that I was doing that it was a Firefox incompatibility that one of my users found out. So like, I would love now to test all of the things in Firefox and in Edge and in Safari to make sure that everything works. And anytime anyone reports a bug like this, that just gets added to my integration test, and then it can't deploy before I do that. So I've been doing a lot of work figuring out how do I want to do integration tests. Seems like the most popular things right now for the stack that I'm working with is Cypress, which is this incumbent. It's been around a lot longer, and Playwright. And Playwright is sort of a newer person in the scene, a newer framework made by Microsoft. And I posted on Twitter to see what people are using, and it seems like for the people who have my app, Cypress and Playwright are the top two, and there's a few people on Cypress that would like to be on Playwright. Cypress has more integrations and like more documentation just because it's been around longer. Playwright is newer, and so might do things differently. So I wasn't sure which one to use, and I was reminded of, here's literary reference number 3, John Carmack's quote, "Focused hard work is the real key to success. Keep your eyes on the goal and just keep taking the next step towards completing it. If you aren't sure which way to do something, do it both ways and see which works better." I love that. I have 2 different choices. I'm not sure which one to do. I could just infinitely look at YouTube videos and see which one's better, but I would learn so much more just by doing it. So first problem of today was, let me try to get Cypress working. I was able to get it working relatively quickly, and then I started writing tests for it, and the test just felt weird. It uses this framework called Mocha. I think there was a Rails framework that you said it looked a lot like.
Cucumber is the Rails framework, yeah.
Cucumber, yes. The syntax just doesn't make sense to me. It's not JavaScript. It's like its own language. You have to say like it dot should dot equal, and I don't like that. It just doesn't feel JavaScripty. So I went a little bit down the path of Cypress and wanted to stop there and try Playwright. And I tried Playwright, and just immediately everything worked so much better. And the syntax makes a lot more sense. It uses the jest syntax, which is much closer to JavaScript and async await stuff. And it also offered to automatically create a GitHub hook for me, which is the ultimate goal I want, to have this within my continuous integration framework. So the correct answer here was try both and see which one you like better. And so far, Playwright looks like it's going to be able to do everything I want it to do. And I would not have, well, it would have been really difficult to figure that out before just trying to implement both of them. So I have a way to do continuous integration, and I'm happy with the choice that I made. What are your thoughts on that?
Cool. Yeah, I like that. Is that John Carmack from id Software? Like
yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
He's a neat guy, by the way. If you ever heard him talk, he's super technical, super quickly.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Some people I listen to talk, and I'm just like, you are so smart. You
I know.
know so many things.
Yeah.
He also joined the Oculus team, now Meta.
Founded the Oculus team, yeah.
Founded, you're right.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. And then one of the co-founders, technical co-founder, I think.
Technical co-founder, yeah.
Yeah. And then now he's only working on that, I think, a day a week. And recently is now trying to make general artificial intelligence. And
Yep.
He could probably do it. Of all the people I'm aware of, he's one of the people who has a fair shot at creating something like this. Yeah, really, really cool guy.
Anyway, yeah, that's good. Do you know if Playwright, so you said Playwright can test on like Internet Explorer as well. Do you know how they do this in the background? Do they use headless things? Do they use how does it actually work?
So I said Internet Explorer, I misspoke. Edge. They do, and Edge uses the Chromium extension. Yes. So they support the WebKit, which is Safari, Firefox, which is Firefox, and Chromium, which is it's Opera, Chrome, and Edge. Got it. So between those three, it's almost every browser, and it supports either headless or head. So when I'm making the test myself, I can see the browser and I have the debug console. But then when I'm deploying, it runs it all headless, and it's just checking run this all in the back end and see if it works. One of the really cool features of being able to run it in with the UI is, I think Cypress does this too, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. You can just open one of their browsers and it records all your actions. So for me, writing a test is, I just open it up in this weird environment and I start clicking things and typing it in, and it generates the code for me that then is the test. And this doesn't apply to me, but if I was using Python or Java or C#, those are the 3 languages it supports, you can generate that test code in any of those languages, or TypeScript or JavaScript. So I'm just keeping it in JavaScript. But yeah, this is a really cool tool that is kind of independent of the way that I'm writing it. Like you could use Playwright with a Rails app, but it's just nice to have, like, the code for this is in the same code as I'm making the other app, as my core code base is, and the test syntax is it is Jest. It just they added some extensions to it to make it asynchronous. The expect library. So like my unit tests and these integration tests feel the same. But you could use this for any web application.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's great the way you're using it, especially just to make sure things don't break just before you deploy. That's what tests are good for. So cool. Yeah. Let me know how it goes.
I will. I've had so much success like doing more testing, and so this feels like the ultimate level of testing of just like test everything all at once. And I'm really excited. There's a few shaving a yak things that I'm finding myself doing with this, of like so man, it already paid off of when I was trying to make the test of just like, can I create a user and create a page? I realized that for some reason that I haven't figured out yet, new users can't create pages, and I don't know why. So,
oops.
Which is like, it hasn't caused any problems yet because I'm just onboarding people one at a time, but like it is a problem. So I need to figure out why that's happening. And then as part of this testing, I'm going to be creating a new user and a new page and a new file upload every single time I run the test suite. And right now I have no way to just nuke all of a user's data. So I am going back in a backend serverless functions and making that code and writing unit tests for that. So then I'll be able to come back and say, okay, after you've run all these integration tests and made sure that like the file goes to Dropbox successfully, delete yourself and then make sure that you were deleted. And then that should clean up everything, because this is running in a production database. Like I want it to test the actual deployment of it. So that's, two things that now I'm out of writing integration test land, and I need to clean up these 2 things, and then I'll go back to integration test. But that's kind of the job of the integration test, right? Is to help me figure out what the most important work is to be doing. I feel like I'm so much better at software development than I was when I first wrote this. Like I know so much more, and I can saliently justify the work that I'm putting into writing these tests. It felt sort of like a waste of time when I was first starting, of like, I just want to write the app. I don't want to test everything. And I didn't really know what level of test was important to do. So I feel like I'm much better at making software.
Yeah. When I was first getting started, like Ruby TDD meant unit tests. And I think that's because, well, there was no way to do real integration tests. And then like Selenium came, and then like early Chromium stuff came, but it was all like, you talk about yak shaving. Integration tests used to be all yak shaving. Like it was so hard to get it running. So it sounds like in 3 palms, you got 2 different frameworks running. So it sounds like a fairly, it's matured quite a bit since I tried it last. So yeah, a lot of my experience with integration tests was fighting the tooling. So it's glad to hear that you only had to do a little bit of that, right? Yeah, that's good.
It was nice. And there's all this backend infrastructure of like integrations with GitHub Actions that
right.
I can, as a solo developer, man, there's like, I'm going to be able to just, from my phone, go to github.com, make a code change, hit commit, and then it's going to like run through these integration tests, check to see if I broke anything, and then deploy it in this Vercel crazy thing and deploy it in the serverless Firebase infrastructure. Like it's just so fun. Like it's amazing that the tooling has advanced to this point. Specifically for Rails, I remember behavior-driven development being a thing for a while, and there was a framework I think called Cucumber that made that easier, where you could like write out specs for how things worked. Do you do any of that right now?
I don't. That was getting closer to integration without going all the way to the view, although I think you could test views. But yeah, it was supposed to test more than just unit tests we're testing. But it was still sort of good integration test or continuous integration really for Rails. So it was kind of a in between stage. Yeah.
Okay. I highly recommend it. Saves a lot of headaches. Cool. Next thing for me, I immediately after recording this podcast have my call with Keith about segmetrics.
Cool.
And this will be like my marketing work for the day, but I would love to clarify with you what my goal is so that I can make sure that I can get that from Keith. I think the thing that I want is to be able to see a list of landing pages that should be converting people and a list of like in between pages. So like the user, when people click sign up and they're landing on the sign up page to enter their email address and stuff, I want to see the percentage of people that are able to successfully create an account from that page. And if that number dips too low, I want that to be flagged of like, hey, only 10% of people are creating an account from this page. Why is this happening? And I want the option to be able to like make an A/B test of if I make the button bigger or if I change the image on the page, does that number go up or down? Although I guess I don't need the A/B test. Well, it would be really nice if I could run A/B test from segmetrics. But the core thing I want is just to know what the baseline percentage is of what the conversion rate is. And I also want to know the source of where they come from. So like to be able to run these tests in Traction, I want to be able to see, okay, I spent $100 in Facebook ads. How much money did that $100 turn into? And can I break that down of like, that $100 turned into 100 people visiting the homepage? What percentage of them converted to clicking the button to sign up? What percentage of that particular segment that came from Facebook converted to becoming a user? What percentage of them made a page? What percentage of them received a file? What percentage of them paid me money? I want to see like that sales funnel, and I want it to be broken down by the traffic source so that I can be confidently running experiments, spending more money on marketing and ads, so that I can do the calculation of if it's worth it. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. I would write those down before you talk to them just to make sure, you go through the different things you actually want. Like,
okay.
Spend 20 minutes writing it down or whatever. Or 5, however much we have after this.
Yeah.
The other thing is since he runs this, he probably has talked to loads of people. So he probably has a really interesting perspective on how people use these and what makes them successful or not. So I would do a little like reverse interviewing on him and try to figure out what you should be tracking. What, how have people used this? What are you not thinking about? That's what I do. He probably has a ton of information that would be helpful.
Smart. Okay. I'll ask him that. He sent me a book that he wrote that I still haven't read. It's like, on this topic, his advice might just be, Christian, read the book I sent you.
Probably.
Talking about figuring out sales funnels. I think this is also work that you wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
What data would you like to be getting from your tracking?
The same, but I don't have the traffic right now to really justify any, like, okay, I say that, but then the voice in the back of my head is collect the data now and you can always analyze it later, like even the little data you have. But yeah, like what the sort, like how people found me, where people drop off, and yeah, I mean, I think I need just pretty basic conversion stuff. Yeah. Like what pages they view before they buy, have they interacted with me before, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I would love to see conversion rate from people who click it in the Slack app store. And then on the topic of traffic, Traction makes a really good point that like you can pay for traffic at any point in your funnel. Like you could buy a Facebook ad right now.
Sure.
Spend $100 on Facebook ads and get whatever traffic you can from that, and then get usable data from that small amount of traffic. Or Google AdWords, like figure out if particular landing pages make sense or particular keywords that people are Googling, or can you get traffic that converts if you pay for an ad in the top spot that's competing with oh my gosh, I keep forgetting what the main competitor is, the really expensive one.
Yeah. You just made me forget it too.
It's not Discord. It's not Slack.
It's you totally made me drop blank. Start. Oh, that's funny.
They were in a tweet this morning. I don't remember. So like, it probably costs whatever $10 a click to get traffic, hijacking people Googling for them. But if you can get someone who intended to find this tool that we can't remember the name of, does that convert well? Do they
Intercom.
turn into it? Intercom. Thank you. Yes.
I knew it started with an in, but I was like, I could just think of Instagram. That's so silly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
if you snipe traffic from Intercom, does that traffic convert? And that might just be 10 people that you snipe, that you have to pay $50 for in traffic. But if half of those are converting and they all pay you, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's do the calculation real quick on if the customer acquisition cost is less than the lifetime value. And if so, okay, let's pump money into this. And if not, that's really useful to know that people who are looking for Intercom make really good customers for you. What are other ways that we could be getting those customers? Can we do some SEO? Can we be making YouTube videos? Can we be, how else are people trying to find Intercom? And then you can just run an infinite number of experiments like that. For a particular type of traffic, does that traffic convert well?
Yeah, that's true. I can always turn on paid ads, which probably means I should, but
I think you mentioned Brittany saying as soon as you got your first customer, she was like, all right, you got whatever the $15 from it. Let's buy $15 of ads.
That's right. Yeah, it's $29 a month, which is kind of high on purpose. Other ones are a little lower. And so she's like, okay. Well, first she said, well, that's not a lot. And I said, okay, hold on. And then she said, how are people finding out about you? And I said, well, the Slack App Store. And she's like, oh, do you have any ads or anything? And I was like, no. She said, why don't you take half of that and buy ads?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very good advice. Yeah. And then, I think, so I think when we had this conversation before, the hesitation was that if you bought those ads, you wouldn't be getting as much data as you could from it to see how those ads performed. So I think
I have three.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I have three reservations. One is, I don't have analytics set up very well right now, which is a solvable problem. The second is I already know the three things people are really looking for because I've had people looking for those already. Those are more customizations, emojis, file uploads. Those might be the three biggest ones. Okay. And so I feel like I would just be wasting money, although I don't know that. So it's something to test. And then the third one is I just hate running ads. It's a lot of work. So I really have to get into the mindset that I really want to do it before I do it. Because it's just a lot, it shouldn't be as much work as it is to pay Google or Facebook or whatever money, but it is.
The last time I dove into Google AdWords, I was like, really? This is how Google makes their money? This is terrible.
It's built for managers of huge multinational companies that need to run, loads of ads. That's what it's built for. So
I feel like there's a product opportunity of someone who just abstracts away the Facebook ad interface and the Google AdWords interface and just makes it stupidly simple and work for the majority of people most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably people out there who I could just say, I want to run ads for this website. Please do it. Here's money. I bet that does exist if I look for it.
There's people for it, especially, for sure.
Moisa used to do that, but I don't know. I don't think she does it anymore.
Yeah, for Facebook ads. That gets expensive though. I want I want a tool that just takes
that does it
a little bit. Yeah. Or I could just suck it up and learn how the tool works. That's probably what I'll end up doing. Cool. That's the topic of segmetrics tracking. I'm feeling optimistic about this. I think from what I've seen so far, I think segmetrics is going to be able to get me all the data that I want. It's not going to be exactly what I want in the way that I would have built it if I built it myself, but my gosh, it'll be so much easier. I think that's the correct way to do this. Yeah. Cool. 2 more personal updates for me. I historically have been very scared of throwing parties, which I can recognize is not a rational thing to be afraid of. But
sure.
The things I'm afraid of specifically are what if no one shows up? And I'm I can deconstruct all this rationally. Well, who cares? I'll invite some people who I know will come, and at least me and that core group of people will have fun. And if I bought food or something for it, well, I can just put it in the fridge and then eat that over the next few days. It doesn't matter. And yeah, all my objections to this are silly, but it's just been a thing that I've felt sort of anxious about. So Sarah and I have both been talking about how we would love to have a richer in-person social network. We both have a lot of remote friends, you included, but it would be nice to also have people in person that if I'm throwing a party or doing a cool thing, there's a group of people I can invite. So I got a book on how to do it. and it breaks down step by step on how to throw a cocktail party and addresses all your possible concerns and makes you a step by step guide of like, here's what you do. And it uses the term cocktail party just because that's like a term that people are familiar with.
Yeah.
That there's a set of assumptions about it that you know, but like it makes the point that you don't have to have alcohol at it, or you could like have non-alcoholic drinks, and but the main focus of the thing is just a place where people can interact with each other and meet new people and develop deeper connections. So that's a skill I want to develop, and I'm pretty good at learning new things and getting good at things that I didn't used to be good at. So look for an update a few podcasts from now on how my first cocktail party went.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's great. I think getting to know people is good. One trick for this, I'm sure your book will have plenty of tricks, but if you ask people to bring something, so like more of like a pitch-in kind of thing, then it's less of a party, like throwing a party, but they actually come because they're like, oh no, they need me to come because I'm bringing the plates.
Yeah.
Then they actually come. So that's why barbecues are great for that. It's like, can you bring potato salad? All right, great.
Clever. I like that.
Yeah. The other thing is, have you seen The Office? Like the show The Office?
Yeah.
I'm picturing the episode where it's the wedding. I think it's a wedding, and Dwight Schrute buys the book that Jim wrote about how to throw a party, and has all sorts of ridiculous things in it, like ridiculous how to greet guests and stuff. Yeah, make sure you didn't buy the Jim Halpert book about how to throw a party.
That's funny. There was something I was going to say about asking people to bring something. There was a part of the book that said this is like, after your second or third party, you can ask your guests to bring a friend. And they say use the word bring instead of invite, because if you ask them to invite a friend,
then they won't
the friend might not come. But if you say bring, it implies like follow through, like you need to actually get another person here. Yeah, so don't invite potato salad. Bring potato salad.
That's right.
When you go, yeah.
That also may only be something you can do once you already know the people. Like if you're just inviting people you don't know very well, then it's probably better to not make them bring anything. But
yeah.
Already friends.
That's part of this book is you want to make sure you have like the core group that you know is going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like my sister and brother-in-law and some couples friends that Sarah and I have been hanging out with here. And then you can, once you have that core group established, you can invite more of the loose connections. And one of the segments of people, it was like friendly people you meet at stores. So like grocery.
I don't know about that.
Store workers. I also don't know about that, but immediately someone came to mind of like, oh, this person I've interacted with at a grocery store. She's this older woman who has helped us find these things several times. And we had a conversation. We have the same eye doctor. She just seems really nice, and I'd like to get to know her better. It'd be very interesting if she interacted with like my friends in Dallas. So I aspire to be able to have this sort of interaction with someone like that. And be able to invite them to a party and like have a positive interaction.
That's the kind of thing, like, I don't know if I aspire to it, but it's something that I've noticed certain people are super good at. Like my mom could talk to anybody for like hours, like in a grocery store or whatever. Like they could just like meet someone in an aisle and like find out all this stuff about them. It's not a skill that I have, I would say. Yeah,
that is a skill that I feel like I'm developing. And so when I was doing all the research on dating, that was something that came up a few times, is like to be able to meet more potential suitors, you should practice the skill of just meeting more people. So it had you go through the exercises of like, just when you're out and about, just practice like smiling at people and talking to them about cool things. And I remember when I started doing this, there was like a guy on the beach who was had a metal detector, and I was like, oh, that's a cool thing that he's doing. Let me practice the skill. And I had like a 20-minute conversation with him about metal detecting. He recommended like the best metal detectors and told me all about how it works. And there was someone else who I ran into who was collecting something on the beach, and I started chatting with her. It was this like older woman who was stooping down, like picking something up. And I was like, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm collecting beach glass. And then that turned into a new hobby for me. I have like 3 pounds of this stuff that I collected over a summer because of that conversation. So, that, like anything else, that meeting people and being able to have cool conversations with them feels like a skill that you can get better at by practicing it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just practice and you get better at it.
I have one more personal update. This is a public service announcement. I did a test recently of what would happen if I didn't circulate the air in the way that I normally do in the bedroom. Usually I have the whole ERV set up that is this ventilator that takes in fresh air and is able to like balance humidity and temperature and recover some of that while it's circulating. But I uninstalled that while we were gone because it's this vent to the outside and I didn't want like someone to break into the house through that opening or something. But I have a backup way of doing that, which is just I leave the AC fan running, which is just circulating air through the whole house. And so I decided not to do that last night just to see what would happen, and compared the data between last night and 2 nights before where I did have it running. And oh my gosh, like the CO2 just jumped up. It was like 2,500 ppm. Anything above 1,000 is there's like measurable cognitive impairment. Yeah. And atmospheric is like around 450 ppm. So I had reaffirmed for me that it's very important to have ventilation. And I remember waking up several times in the night feeling like, I don't feel like I can breathe as well as I usually can. It's probably just because I know that the fan's not running. It's probably fine. But like, man, it got really high, and I don't feel like I slept as well, and I didn't feel like I could think as clearly this morning. So open your windows, folks. It's very important.
Interesting. I have a CO2 meter. I should measure that for our house. We have the Nest, the smart thermostat, and I have it set to run the fan 15 minutes every hour, I think. So at night only. Yeah, it runs. So, but maybe I should turn that up. I don't know. I should test it.
I'd be curious what the data is. Anything above, if it measures in ppm, anything above 1,000 is bad.
Yeah.
Should be lower than that. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.